Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jack de Groot and I'm your host, according to Liz, so that's delightful to be host to this group. We're about to move to the conversation with between Frank and Thomas, but I just wanted to thank you all for being here at lunch today. To my colleagues within Catholic Schools Parramatta Diocese, I expect you to actually engage fully and ask questions and challenge back. So this is your performance indicator for the lunch. Don't be too passive, because it's a good opportunity to talk about faith in the public square. There are a number of people to acknowledge as well, and particularly I wanted to thank Veronica, who works with me at Catholic Schools Parramatta Diocese. Events like this do not happen unless there is a Veronica in the world. So thank you, Veronica. Mark O'Connor's work is supported by Corporate Australia. It's the only way that Mark could survive, really. Dominic, we're very delighted to have you with us and thank the Pace Foundation for their ongoing support of the Helder Camara Lecture Series, the work that Mark does in bringing thought leaders from around the world to Australia. And it's great to have that partnership. So thank you very much, Dominic. This is a bit of, people from my past event. So Paul McClintock's here. He's the chair of St Vincent's Health Australia. He once tried to merge the ministries of the Australian Jesuits and failed. And it's about the only thing that Paul's ever failed at in his life. It's temporary setback. But to have Paul representing both St Vincent's Health Australia and that world of the Ministry of Healthcare, particularly the day after World Health Day, which the Church celebrates on the feast of St Bernadette of Lourdes. We have Yolanda Sayes here, who I worked with at the St Vincent de Paul Society, who's the CEO now, and to welcome Yolanda. And then let me move to Frank Brennan. I don't have any credentials in education. Frank Brennan taught me. That's about the only credential I have. I think I was 14 or 15, and Frank was what we called our tutor group leader or master or something. And when he was a young scholastic in the Jesuits and was sent to a school, and he survived and I survived, so that's about as good as it got. And it is delightful to welcome Frank back to the Diocese of Parramatta, both on behalf of Catholic Education and the Diocese, to be our interlocutor with Tomas Halik, who we welcome back to Australia for his fourth visit to Australia. He was just telling me before he was been involved with the Paralympic movement and was here for the Paralympics 2000 or 2001, and so has a good expression and experience of the Australian psyche, not just in terms of faith in the public square, but our passion for sports and our passions for inclusion. You've got a biography there, both of Thomas and Frank, and Thomas's extraordinary contribution to, I suppose, the relevance of faith in the world, and particular in a secular world, what our Catholic identity forges in our approach to engagement with the great debates and great searches for meaning in contemporary developed economies, in Western society, but also has done a huge amount in engagement in interfaith and how our respective communities of faith, which are very strong here in the west of Sydney, make sense of their engagement in the common good and public space, and how we are all commanded by our faith traditions to really shape for the common good all that can be done to help our communities flourish. So we welcome Frank and Thomas to take the stage and to lead our conversation. Welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and great to be with you. Well, introducing myself to a group of educators and hearing Jack's story, I, as a young Jesuit, I was trained as a lawyer and in politics, but then I was sent to Xavier College in Melbourne to do some teaching. And the rector of the college didn't know what to do with me, so he thought the main thing I should do would be to teach Year 10 mathematics. And the school was a highly streamed school in those days. I'm sure you don't do that in the Parramatta Diocese, at least anymore. And one class I had was Year 10 Group 6 mathematics. They were the self-described veggie maths class. And those of you who are teachers would know that a Year 10 veggie maths class is about as difficult a disciplinary problem as one could ever confront. Well, one morning tea, the deputy principal came to me and said, "Has anyone ever sat in on one of your classes?" And I thought, here's trouble. He said, "I think I'd better come to the next one." And I thought, oh my God, it's Year 10 Group 6 mathematics. So he came along. Well, every time I asked a question, 22 hands shot up, "Sir, sir." They never got a right answer, but they were fully compliant. And at the end of the class, the deputy principal walked out, and one of them, James Tian, who happens to be a brother of Dan Tian in the Federal Parliament, called out, "Well, you owe us one now, sir." And that was the moment I concluded, Thomas, that I was a good educator. That it's all about those relationships. And so, in terms of building those relationships within the multicultural, pluralistic society of Australia, we try to bring something of the Catholic heritage and the Catholic tradition. Now, before we come into our conversation, could I invite you, Thomas, to spend a few minutes telling us about yourself? Because, I mean, you're a psychotherapist, you're a priest, you're a theologian who's won the Templeton Prize, you've been given an honorary doctorate by Oxford, you've travelled the globe extensively, not only speaking but meeting with all the key theologians, particularly in the Western world. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here for 1 week now, for the fourth time. And from my bio very shortly, I was born in 1948 when the communists came to power in Czechoslovakia. And I grew up in the secular intellectual family. And I was attracted when I was 18 by the Catholic culture, the architecture. Many of you perhaps know Prague. So this architecture of the churches was something quite different than this social realism in the 50s and 60s. And I was attracted by the spiritual music and then by the literature and philosophy, especially by the English Catholicism, Chesterton and Graham Greene. It was my first step to this Catholic culture. But in the late 60s, I met several priests. They spent 10, 15, 16 years in the communist prison because the persecution of the church in our country was very hard. Perhaps the communists have chosen the Czechoslovakia as the field of experiment of a total atheization of society, because it was already quite a secular country. There was some tension between the Catholic identity and the national identity because of the John Huss and the Hussite wars and the violent recatholization in the 17th century, and then the contact between the Habsburg monarchy and the Catholic Church. So it was quite different, like in Poland. In Poland, the Polish national identity and the Catholic identity together, it was the pillar against the German Protestantism and the Russian Orthodoxy. So And then I met those very interesting people and priests, and they became my spiritual fathers. And then it was a time of so-called Prague Spring, the hope for some liberation or a little more human socialism. But then came the Russian occupation in '68 and another 20 years of persecution, which was not so drastic like in the Stalinist era, but more sophisticated. The secret police was everywhere, and so in that time I decided to become a priest, and it was the only possibility in the underground, because there was only one priest seminary, totally controlled by the state, and there was no only possibility to enter the seminary immediately after the secondary school. But I got already my university studies and my doctorate in philosophy and sociology. So for me was the only possibility to study in underground and to be secretly ordained. And also, I didn't want to be just a parish priest. I was inspired by the Théâtre de Chardin, who said that we need only the prêtre ouvrier, the working priest, but also the priest for the scientists and for the intelligentsia. So I feel, because I was born in the family of an intellectual, so I would like to serve those people. And so I was ordained in '78, and then I was 11 years in underground. My civil profession was psychotherapist with drug abusers and alcoholics. And after the fall of communism, I became the first general secretary to the New Bishops' Conference, and I founded this academic parish in Prague and the Czech Christian Academy. And I started also to teach at the university, to travel. I was not allowed to travel for 20 years, so after the fall of communism, I visited all continents, even Antarctica, and 4 times Australia. So to give a global and to have a global perspective. And now I'm teaching, writing books, traveling, and so on.
Well, now, 1978 you were ordained, and of course we got a new pope in 1978, didn't we? And I remember the last time you were here in Australia, when we had a conversation, you had a fascinating account of your meeting with John Paul II, and his predictions and your predictions about when things would change, particularly in your home country. Could you share something of that?
Okay. I was ordained just a day before the internalization of John Paul II. It was in the private chapel of a bishop in Erfurt in East Germany. And there was just 3 people during my ordination, and the next morning I got my first mass, also in the empty chapel. And after I went with the bishop to his apartment to follow the intronization mass of John Paul II, and with this preaching, non abbiate paura, don't be afraid. And I thought myself, would I have one day the possibility to tell this Pope, Holiness, I'm the first priest who was ordained under your pontificate. And I've got this possibility after 11 years, when was the canonization of Prague in '89 in November. And first time we were allowed, so 11,000 pilgrims to be at this canonization ceremony in Rome, and I used this possibility to contact President John Paul II. It is a long story, but to make it a long story short, I was invited for a private dinner with him, with one chicken.
As you do.
And then it was day before the fall of Berlin Wall. And at first, the Pope said, "In which language we will speak?" And I said, I told him Polish and perhaps German or English. And so, "Oh, you speak wonderfully Polish." And I said, "It is not Polish, Holy Father, it is Pan-Slavic Esperanto." And he said, "Yeah, so we will speak in this." And then he came from the TV and said, "This is the end of communism." And I answered, "Holy Father, excuse me, I'm afraid that the papal infallibility does not work in the political affairs. I think there will be some 5 years of perestroika and so Gorbachev time." "No, no, you must be prepared. It will be very soon." And it was in 10 days. In 10 days for the communism, when I returned, there was the revolution. And then the exile bishop, the Czech exile bishop, who was with me by the Pope, he visited Prague after 40 years for Christmas, and I took him to my old friend Václav Havel. It was 2 days before his election president. And he said, "Oh, if I would be elected, I would like to invite the Pope, John Paul II, to visit our country, perhaps before the first free elections. He can a little bit to have some peace to this atmosphere." And so, and the popes and bishops are it is 2-3 years preparation. But when he returned, he was invited again to the Pope, and he told him about our conversation with Havel. And the Pope said, "Why not? But I must receive the invitation." So I went the next day to the new elected president, and the official invitation, and then I was invited to come for 2 months to Vatican to prepare this the first visit of John Paul II in the post-communist countries. So, and I was practically every day with him. He asked me, "What should I read from Václav Havel?" I said, "Perhaps letters to Olga." "I have read it." So, I have read it. The Pope reads at night. And then he came, and so it was my beginning with. And then I was appointed the counselor for the Pontifical Council for dialogue with non-believers. So I've many times the possibility to speak with him. He has an incredible good memory. When I met him after 2 years, he said, "Oh, last time we spoke about in these 2 years he had to speak with thousands of people, and he remembered the subject we were speaking 2 years ago." So he knew all our bishops by name and asked about what is with him, and so.
Well, now, I think it's fair to say that you've known the last 3 popes and have actually had quite a good relationship with them. And, I mean, basically you've been a fan of each of them. Now, in the divided world and divided church of which we're a part now, a lot of people would wonder, well, how could you be a great admirer of John Paul II and a great admirer of Francis? So can you unpack that for us?
It is not just my conformity. No. I think they were right popes for the right moment. The John Paul II was right pope for that time of the transition from communism, and he played a very important role because his first visit to Poland, to his native land, year after his election, it created a moral atmosphere from which the solidarity movement was born. At that time, the Polish people realized, and also the Polish communist authority realized, so the Polish nation, the authority for the Polish nation is the Polish Pope, not the government. So, and the opposition became quite strong, and the church offered a platform when the workers and the intelligentsia and the church created a coalition against this communist government, and it was the beginning of the end of communism. I think the Pope Benedict, it was quite different. I met him first during this time of preparation of the John Paul II trip to Prague. I invited him for a lecture, and he said, yes, I was so near to Prague. I was in Regensburg. I never been in Prague, and I thought, Eminency, it is not a sin, but a shame. It's not Sünde, aber Schande. And he said, yes, and he come. And on his trip to Prague, to Czechoslovakia, in the plane, he at first expressed his idea about this courtyard of the Gentile. And I think his best sentences were always in the plane. He was perhaps too near to the boss, and so he was some very good expression during the trip in the plane. So he said the church must create something like the temple in Jerusalem, the space for people that are not fully identified with the religion, but they are the seekers, they are open people. And Temple of Jerusalem have some space for these pious pagans. And we must do the same. Just the sect is just for the people that are fully identified. And the church is not a sect. She must be open also for the seekers and for the people that are only, they have some sympathy, but they are not fully identified with the church. And it was for many years my idea, we must create also some open space for the seekers. And he said also the three most important tasks for the Czech church, it is the education, then the dialogue with the agnosticism, and then charity. And these are the three pillars, and I think it was very good. It was not so well accepted by many people in our church. They think, oh, we must restore the old tradition and so on. No, education, the dialogue with the agnosticism, and charity. So I think he was in this aspect, in a sense, right man for the right moment. But he was a little bit too fragile for this great problems with the sexual abuse and so on. I think he was an intellectual. He was not a fighter with Curia and with all the things. Also, John Paul II, he didn't believe this news about this abuse, because during the Nazi time and the communist time, the Nazi and the communists always blame some non-conformist priests. They are homosexuals, they are the sexual abuse and so on. So the John Paul II said, oh, this is the same. It is just, I don't believe it. And I think that Benedict realized that is a problem, but he was not strong enough to take the radical decision. So it was the very hard work for Francis, and I think that Francis is the right man for this time of the great transition. And I think we are now in the situation of a great transition. It is the deep crisis of the church, but every crisis is a challenge, is a chance, is an opportunity to go deeper. And I think we must use this opportunity, to use this very important time, And I think the vision of Pope Francis of the synodal reform is very important. He gave us the very valuable impulses, but we should reflect more about these impulses. It's this, like this idea of the church as a field hospital. I think it's a great idea. And
so what do you say to those Catholics of goodwill who say, look, Francis has undone so much of the good work done by John Paul II in giving us certainty and authority and tradition? What do you say to them?
Wake up. Wake up, there is another time, there is another challenge, and we must recognize the sign of the times. The sign of the times in the 80s was quite different than now, and we cannot, if we are people of tradition, so we must be against the traditionalists, because the traditionalists would like to stop the tradition. The tradition is the river, the living river of the creative recontextualization. And and the traditionalists are against the tradition, and they just stop and want to put one moment out of the context and to make the idol. This is the idolatry. So this traditionalism, go back to that time. No, there is no way back. We are just now, and we must be open what will come in the future. So to recognize the sign of the time and to differentiate it from the spirit of the time. The spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, it is the language of this world. But the sign of the times is the language of God through the events in culture and society. So in one of my books, I try to develop a methodology, the kairology, to understand the kairos. The kairos is a time of opportunity, sometimes time of crisis, but we should accept these challenges and to understand the God's language in the event, in the culture and the society and the present history. So I think it's our task.
You've written a great series of books with very fine titles, including Patience with God, Night of the Confessor, Christian Faith in an Age of Uncertainty, and now the one to which you just referred, The Afternoon of Christianity, The Courage to Change. I have the impression in all of those writings you're not so much interested in the rabid atheist, neither are you much interested in the person of absolutely robust Christian faith.
Yeah.
Where you find life is where there's tension and paradox as people wrestle with the notion of being a believer while being engaged in the world and the mess and complexity of the world.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Okay, I think the spectrum of the spiritual life today is very colorful, and the number of people they are fully identified with the organized religion is diminishing. But also the number of the dogmatic atheists is diminishing, and more and more people they are in between. And it is the time of when the walls are falling. And after the fall of Berlin Wall, there's also the fall between the so-called non-believers and so-called believers. I think today is the belief and non-belief. They are not two groups of people. It is something. What is the dynamism in the soul, in the heart, in the brain of many people? The mixture between belief and unbelief, and I think we should develop this dialogue inside, because for me the faith and doubts are like two sisters. They need each other. So faith without the critical questions and without some doubts could be the fanaticism, fundamentalism, bigotry, but also the rationalism without the spiritual dimension is one-sided and dangerous. So we need this dialogue inside to correct each other. I think it was also a very good result of this Benedict's papacy. It was in fact before he was elected. He got this famous discussion with Jürgen Habermas in Munich, and the end of the discussion was that the secular humanism and the Christian faith and the Christian theology need each other to overcome the one-sidedness of both sides. And I think it's a very good, the John Paul and the Benedict just completed the long period of Christianity, which has the main task, the confrontation with modernity. And I think it was quite a good end of this confrontation. We need each other. But now with Pope Francis, it's a new, I think the Vatican II came a little bit too late. We wanted to embrace the secular humanism and the modernity in the moment when the modernity was almost over. And it was the time of post-modernity. I think with 68, it was perhaps the highest point of modernity, and the 69, the year when the man was on the moon, and when the computer was developed. I think it was the beginning of the new era, of this internet era, global era, and so with 68 ended the modernity, the post-modernity, and it needs quite different strategy for the church. And I think that Pope Francis is the right man for this. But he gave us impulses, and we should to think about these impulses and to put it in the practice.
I was very taken with your description of the conversation between Sigmund Freud and Oscar Pfister. Freud wondered how a Christian could be tolerant of atheism. And you quoted Pfister saying, "When I reflect that you are much better and deeper than your disbelief, and that I am much worse and more superficial than my faith, I conclude that the abyss between us cannot yawn so grimly."
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
So, I think it is so that that faith and non-belief is something which has more levels. There are some, I know the non-belief of some believers and some belief of non-believers. I ask me sometimes the question, why I understand sometimes better with some non-believers than with some believers. And I realize, oh yes, the answer is in the depth psychology. The C.G. Jung thought that human soul, there's a superficial, thin level of the rational, of the consciousness, but there is the deep unconsciousness, and the main decision are making this depths of non-consciousness. So something what the Bible and the Pascal call heart, Augustine heart. And I think there are some people, they have in this conscious level, they are very religious. But when we have the possibility to look a little bit inside, so the heart is very, 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 very close. And there are also some people, they from various reasons are on this conscious level against religion. Perhaps they didn't have they were not so lucky to meet somebody who is really the good witness of the faith. Maybe it is the effect of media and the secular environment. So they say, I'm non-believer. But when I speak with those people, I discover something which is the openness to this absolute mystery. Sometimes I ask the people, okay, you are a non-believer, but tell me how the God looks like in which you don't believe. And when he taught me about his image of God, I say, thanks to God that you don't believe in such a God. In such a God, I don't believe either. And so you, Papa, moment, but I'm not a stupid materialist. I know that something is above of us. And it is what I call somethingness. I think somethingness is the most widespread religion in our country. People, I don't believe in God. I don't trust the church. But something there is above of us. So I think the role of the theology is to give the hermeneutics of the something. What is this something? And it is the start of the dialogue. It is not the end of the dialogue. It starts to be what could be beside this religious terminology and atheist terminology. I think it's time also we should discover a new terminology. So Karl Rahner said that the word God is so tired and so wounded that perhaps we should choose another word for this absolute mystery. He spoke about this absolute future, and sometimes something is behind of these words. We need some new terminology. The problem of religion today is mainly the problem is the religious language, and so we must be creative in our language.
Now, we're in the middle of Pope Francis's big synod project. Mm-hmm. 4 months ago, we had the first session where there was a lot of listening and discernment. Only 8 months until we get to the crunch part. The tension between dogma or doctrine and pastoral solicitude and outreach. Mm-hmm. Just to quote one sentence from the synod document last October. If we use doctrine harshly and with a judgmental attitude, we betray the gospel. If we practice mercy on the cheap, we do not convey God's love. Mm-hmm. How do we find that happy medium?
I had the Cana Martini taught after the Humane Vitae. He said, oh yes, there is the doctrine of the Pope, and there is our experience. So we must ask God to give us the third option. So sometimes we must ask for the third option. This conservative, this just doctrine is the one possibility, and to put it absolutely away, another possibility. And I think we should find the third way, not to accept everything uncritically, but also not to reject everything uncritically. It was in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the church, especially the European church, was so shocked by the revolution, by the terror of the French Revolution. It was different experience was with American Revolution or this English Revolution, which has not this terror period. But the church, especially in Rome, was so in panic, and they reject the modernity as such. It was the syllabus and all these anti-modernist movement, and they reached, and it created what I call Catholicism, the closed system, which was so attracted by the past. It was influenced also by the Romanticism. The Romanticism has its own image about the Middle Age. It was the illusion about the Middle Age, and they want to go back to this Christendom. We spoke about it this morning, and it was so visible in the art. In this period was a neo-Baroque, neo-Gothic, neo-Scholastic, neo-Thomism. Something always was for the past. The fascination with the past. Nothing new, nothing original. And so I think this Catholicism, this culture war against the modernity, against the modern philosophy, modern science, modern art, modern culture, and just to create some castle which will defend our identity. And it was a disaster. So I think the Vatican II was the first step out of this Catholicism toward the Catholicity of the Church. It is the ecumenical openness, and it began with the Vatican II. Then there was some shock with the 68, and the Church was a little bit go back, and now the Pope Francis is going on from this transition from this Catholicism to the Catholicity. And I think the Catholicity, it should be the ecumenism, the first ecumenism with the non-Catholic Christian churches, the second ecumenism dialogue with other religions, the third ecumenism with the seekers and agnostics, non-believers, and the fourth ecumenism, our relation to our planet, to the oikumene of the whole universe, and I think the Pope Francis gives us the impulses for these 4 stages of ecumenism. We should put it in life.
Now, before I get the audience to ask their questions, could I just ask you to share the Czech myth that you had in the afternoon of Christianity about the burning of the scaffolding of the building? Yeah. And to
if you can, you have the, perhaps this.
I have it here.
Okay. I have the good English translation.
Okay. So the builder of one of the Gothic churches in Prague ordered the wooden scaffolding to be set alight after the construction was finished. When the fire ignited and the scaffolding tumbled thunderously to the ground, the builder panicked and committed suicide, thinking that his building had collapsed. And Thomas writes, "It seems to me that many Christians who are in a panic at this time of change are succumbing to a similar error. What is collapsing may be only wooden scaffolding. When it burns down, the church building will certainly be scorched by fire, but the essentials which have long been hidden are yet to be revealed." Apply that.
Yeah, I think so. Many priests in our country opposing the Pope Francis, they see him as a Catholic Gorbachev. And this, yes, it was like the Gorbachev. He begins with the glasnost, so to be open and to speak frankly. Then was the perestroika. This is the synodal renewal, this perestroika. Look, and he destroyed, the Gorbachev destroyed the Soviet Union by this perestroika and by this glasnost, and the same is doing the Pope Francis with the Catholic Church. But these people think that the Catholic Church is the totalitarian institution, and It is in some way. Some structures inside the church are the totalitarian, and they are really in danger during this reform. But I believe, and I think we should all believe, that the Catholic Church as such is not just Soviet Union. It's not just a totalitarian state. So some totalitarian structures will be perhaps distracted in this process, but thanks to God.
So we have plenty of time for questions and discussion. Do we want people stand up, identify yourself, and maybe come to this microphone? Or, oh no, we've got roving mics. Yeah. Great. So just put your hand up and someone will come to you with a roving microphone, give your name, maybe just a brief introduction, and ask your question.
And please slowly and distinctly.
Yes.
Thank you, Tomas, for a wonderful lecture. Francis Campbell from the University of Notre Dame. And I will speak very slowly, not only for you.
He's a foreigner.
Yeah.
Don't send me away just yet. Remember, I'm a Brexit refugee. I was struck with your personal experience of the underground church. Mm-hmm. I was struck with your what Frank brought out in your conversation with John Paul around his analysis of the communist regime and how to deal with it. And he sort of went against conventional Vatican thinking, which was around making accommodation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm going to bring you to China today. And if Cardinal Zen was sitting where Frank is, Zen would say that the church risks making the same mistake of accommodating for the purpose of structure, for the ordination of bishops, so that the sacramental life of the church can continue. But I've heard him personally say, this will have no credibility with the people. It's eating at the soul of the church. So on the basis of your experience in then Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, what would you say to the Vatican today in grappling with that issue of how to deal with the communist system?
I have some doubts and some suspicions if this Vatican politics toward China and toward other Cuba and so on is okay. I don't know the situation in China, Cuba so well, so I don't want to transmit our situation, so all the context is different. But there are some similarities, and this East politics of Vatican in the 60s was a catastrophe. This Cardinal Casaroli wanted to, no, underground church, no, don't provoke the communists. So little step by step, and they appointed some these collaborators with communists for bishops, especially in Hungary. In our country, not so many, but they were we were practically without bishops. But for us, it was much better to have no bishops than these uncredible collaborators with the communists. And so, but this was killing the church. It has some historical reason. Immediately after the Second World War, the Pius XII expected the persecution of the church in these communist countries, and he ordained all the bishops to secretly ordain one auxiliary bishop for time of the persecution. And it was done in our country, but some clever Monsignor in Vatican put these names in Annuario Pontificio. So all these people were arrested. And some of them, in the last moment, ordained another bishop, but without the approval from Vatican, because it was not possible. So it was the beginning of this hierarchy in our country. So my group, and we have the relations with the bishops in Poland or in Germany. There were some good bishops because the situation was much better than in our country. Yes, so this Vatican politics was and then after this hard politics of Pius XII against communism. So in the 60s and at the council, the John 23rd, perhaps it was mistake, this hard politics of Pius XII. We should perhaps do another politics, and we must ask the people in the countries what they think about. But the really bishops were in prison at that time, so they asked the people they were in office, but it was the collaborators. And they said, yes, we must collaborate with communists and so on. So it was the beginning of this compromise. Politicians which destroyed the church in many things. And then came the John Paul II, and 2 days after his election, he was asked, how will be your Ost politics, this East politics? And he said, it will be no more naive, because he knew the communism. And in our country, the Cardinal Tomas Halik, he was very cautious. He was always very obedient to Vatican. So in that time, he was very cautious. But when he first met the John Paul II, he said, you must be hero. So he became hero. He was obedient. And when the Vatican said, you must be hero, so he was almost 90, and he became hero. He accepted some people from the underground church, like the two old theologians and me. I was the third one, and he started the different politics toward the communist regime, and he became the national hero and the symbol of the spiritual struggle with the communist regime, and played a very important role in the Velvet Revolution and so on. So I'm a little bit afraid that the Vatican could give the same position, but I don't know what is the personal qualities of these bishops and so on. So the situation is a little bit different in the context, but I have these suspicions, I have these questions about if it is so good, this compromise with the communist regime.
Thomas, thank you for a fascinating presentation, deeply rich and insightful. I'm David Rose from the New South Wales Ecumenical Council. Mm-hmm. And I was particularly interested in your last point around ecumenism and the 4 stages of ecumenism. In particular, the 4th one, oikumene, the need for a renewed relationship with our world, with our planet, that we have a common home. And it seems to offer hope for a new impetus for ecumenism. Mm-hmm. Could you perhaps say a little bit more about that?
So I think there are great impulses in the encyclical of Pope Francis, especially Laudato Si. It is and in this broader ecumenism, in the social aspect, this is a Fratelli Tutti. I think the Fratelli Tutti should be for the 21st century so important as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for the 20th century. There are great impulses for this Catholicity, that the Church and the Catholicity is also the task for the Protestant churches. We all confess the one holy apostolic Catholic apostolic Church, the universal Church, and I think it is the task for the future, for all history of the Church to develop this Catholicity. The Catholicity was done as a task. It is nothing which is so from the beginning. It is something which should be developed, and yes, and also this our relation with with our environment. So 60 years ago, when you read some books, books about the Christian ethics, there was nothing about our responsibility for the environment. There was a lot about sexual morality, about how to deal with with money and so the economics, but nothing with this very important dimension of the human life, which is now the young generation is very sensible to this. If people say, "Oh, young people are unmoral," absolutely not. I think they are. Many of this young generation have the great ethical sensitivity, but it is different that it was in 20 years ago. So they are not so fascinated about the question of sexual morality. They doing their own way, following their consciousness. What is it? Conscious.
Following their conscience.
Yeah. And they are not so unresponsible. Sometimes they are not so conform with the catechism, but they are not unresponsible, and they have a special sensitivity toward this environment ethics, and I think is one of the very important step of Pope Francis toward the sign of the times. Now, it is something what the young people can say, yes, what the Pope is saying, it is something what we feel as very important.
Thomas, it's beautiful to hear you talk about young people in such a insightful way that shows a real affinity with youth. Many of our colleagues here work in schools. Some of them are principals and others are religious education coordinators. I read online that you have baptised more than 1,000 university students. Yeah, wow, 3,000, incredible. So I was just wondering, do you have any insights or practical wisdom for them in their work with children and young people in schools?
Okay, so I have not so much experience with the little children, and when I'm invited to the parish and they say, "And you must have a sermon for children," I say, "Oh, please no," because I have heard some parish priests, they have first the sermon for the adults, and it was already very infantile, and then was another sermon for the children with the concept that the children are the little idiots, and they are not. They have their own sensitivity toward the mystery and toward the sacred. So I admire the children's vision. There is something in the children have something what we have lost, the ability to combine the realistic view and this poetic view. When is the Father Christmas, so the child know in one way that it is his father, but he is now the Father Christmas, and it was something like the ancient for our ancestors in pre-modern time. They were perhaps able to put these two words together, these poetic words and these real words. There's a very nice book about if the Greeks believe their myths. They was able to put these two words together. And the children are the same. But then, in the school, when they are in the school, they must decide. This is reality, and this is just the poetics. And so I was very curious about to speak to the children, because I admire this very colorful imagination of the children, but I don't feel to have the capacity to speak to them, because I find my face when I was adult and so. But for this people in the secondary school and the university, there are many people. They they are very interested in the spiritual things. There's another one in our church, which is really the church in the very heart of Prague, in front of the Charles Bridge, and in this most atheistic country, the church is every Sunday full, and full of young people especially. But sometimes I have seen there are some 13 years, 14 years, what it is. People say, oh, your preachers are so intellectuals and so long and so, and for those younger. And I realize that the children of the pious parents, and they want to protest against the parents. It is the period they must protest, and it is the best way how to protest against the children. I will not go to the church with you anymore. But they need something. And when they discovered, oh, there is a church, there is the mass in late evening, and there are many people, there are 23, so there are, for them, they can identify with those people, so they are very happy here. And they perhaps don't understand much about my preachings, but they are happy that there are some good atmosphere of young people. And if the children are clever, they say, you must not go there. It is late. It is the late evening, and Halik, and no. And so and the children, in spite, yes, I will go there. And the parents are very happy that they have the contact with the church. So, but in the students, I think so. Some of them. It is a little bit, this Christianity is infectious. Sometimes one of the family began to go to our course. We have 2 years catechumenate. Every Tuesday I have a lecture and discussion, and we have several weekends together. And 1 year is one member of a family. Next year comes the sister, and even a mother is coming after 2 years, because they are all from the atheistic families, and they have heard something. Oh, is that something interesting? Some of them knew me from TV and from my books and so on. And I have now one chaplain who is also a natural scientist, and he has the books about evolution and so on, very clever thing. So they are attracted by this, they are coming, and they see that they are taken seriously. At the beginning, I always say, please, no masks. Be frankly, I take you seriously as you are. We are all part of the secular society. So you have your prejudices against the church. You have the doubts. So let us speak about it. Don't play a pious man. And I can't answer all your questions. Something is also a mystery for me. And I will tell you very frankly, there are something what I must struggle also. And I don't think that the church is here to give the full answers for all questions. I think that there's a nice, in one of my book, I said on the Prague metro of the subway was written, Jesus is the answer. And somebody has written, what was the question? And sometimes we know the good answers and we have forgotten the questions. But the answers with those questions is like the fallen trees with those roots. And the questions must provoke, and the answers must provoke another questions. So I think it's very important to put the catechism in this process of questioning, thinking, and I say, yes, there's a great mystery, and also we are not owners of the whole truth. Just that Jesus can say, I am the truth. We are not Jesus, we are followers of Jesus. We are on the way. We are a community of pilgrims, and we are not in the goal. And there is always this space for questions, for doubts, and also for the adoration.
So we might just make time for one last question.
Yeah,
David.
Thanks very much, Thomas. It's terrific. You've given me an idea. I think we should be going around spraying graffiti, Jesus is the question. Just wondering about your reflections on the inflection point between modernity and post-modernity, and the rhythms of history, I guess, as well. Over 150 years ago, I guess, Matthew Arnold wrote a poem called Dover Beach, and he talked about the long withdrawing roar of Christianity in Europe, basically. And tides go out, but tides come in as well. And just wondering what you think about the current kairos, the current moment of post-modernity, and whether it does present the kind of opportunity, and how the church should be grasping that opportunity to speak to a generation of young people who are experiencing a range of questions and a sense of meaninglessness. We have an epidemic of teenage self-harm in this country, across the Western world really, accelerated by technology to a large extent, which encourages us to look in the mirror rather than look out the window. How do you think the church should go about grasping the opportunity of the moment?
Yeah, so especially in front of the artificial intelligence, it will be so a radical revolution, much more radical than the industrial revolution with this artificial intelligence. And I think we should do what the artificial intelligence is not able to do, and it is the meditation. It is the contemplative approach. So the artificial intelligence has a very quick answers for all questions. And I put a question, and there's a lot of answers of the artificial intelligence, but there is no space and time for meditation, to see the things from the other perspective. And I think it is our task, this contemplative approach to reality, which is also able to accept the paradoxes. I met once the Japanese Jesuit Kadewaki. I met him at the Sophia University in Tokyo, and then I invited him to Prague, and he was very interested in the Jewish city and Jewish museum, because his idea was that the biblical way of thinking is very near to the Japanese way of thinking, and especially the Zen meditation. And he inspired me to realize that many parables of Jesus are koans. That there's something, as a koan, that we cannot. One my Jewish friend told me, these parables of Jesus, they are like the Jewish jokes. You must say, oh, this is if the Jesus was asked, what is the barmhert, the love of God and acceptance of God, and he didn't say, now we will define God and the definition of love, and so he told the parable. One lady have lost the money, and she discovered the money and said, "Oh my God, we are going to celebrate it." And so is the feeling of God for the sinners. And I think that must be something like in the jokes. Oh yes, it is so. It is not this scholastic way, because sometimes our preaching about the parables of Jesus are like the attempt to explain the joke. But explain the joke, it is to kill the joke. Ne? We cannot explain it. And Jesus said, yes, who is able to understand? Understand. He didn't explain it step by step. And I think it's like the joke, like the koan. It is something, the riddle, it's a paradox. And we should learn the people to live with the paradox, to meditate about it. And then came an enlightenment, insight. But we should create the atmosphere for this. And I think it's also in the school. So to create the atmosphere for the contemplation, for looking from the other perspective, to change the perspective, and so I think this is the way.
So could we invite Angela to come forward for the vote of thanks?
Mm-hmm.
So a very big thank you to you, Thomas and Frank, for those wonderful questions. Just sitting down the back there feeling slightly unintellectual in some of those questions that were put, so I'll do my very best. And always love when Elizabeth gives me a call and I think, what do I need to do now? But there's no big TV cameras, so that's good. It's been an absolute privilege to be able to join everyone here today and to listen to you in person. Thomas, obviously read a lot of your works, and there's lots of articles in the Catholic Outlook and Weekly and so on that I've certainly seen over the years, and this opportunity to be here today was one that I grabbed with both hands. Your insights have been challenging, but also actually, I think, very affirming. They affirm our thinking, the way that we're questioning, the way that we're discerning, certainly as leaders in Catholic schools, within a very dynamic and changing landscape, including the makeup of our schools, who comes through our doors every single day. You've certainly provoked some deep thought and meaningful questions that I know that I'm going to take back to my community. I've got lots of scribbles here, so I hope that it makes sense. But I believe the challenges that we face are not new, but they certainly require different action. So when we're talking about transformation and doing things differently, I think that's exactly what's happening for us in our schools at the moment, particularly as we're undertaking our Catholic Identity project as well. But I put in the context of, for most of us here, we had a Catholic upbringing. I certainly did. Catholic family, Catholic school, 100% Catholic. If you didn't know the red catechism and the green catechism, you're in, where is heaven? Heaven is where God is. We all experience that. But as I've moved through my experience, I stepped out of Catholic education, swearing I'd never go back. I lasted 3 years and I came back home. And there is a real sense of what that looked like as a Catholic school. There's something very, very different. And when we talk about trying to identify that, there's something very different about who we are as a Catholic school. You can feel it and you know it when you walk in, and we've got much to be thankful for and grow on. But I talk about this in the sense that there are only 2 of all of my friends that I'm still friendly with who experience that Catholic education that still practice. And having said that, all of their children and their children's children still go to Catholic schools. And that says they're still seeking something from us, and it provides us with this wonderful opportunity, as you say, to rethink the way that we're doing the work and how we're inviting people into that dialogue. They are definitely looking for something that they've had. To add to that, my community is 42% Catholic, not very many practicing Catholics, a very significant Hindu population, but who are seeking the experience of a Catholic school, not because we do things better in terms of behaviour, but many of them have experienced Catholic schooling in India. They like our values, they like what we stand for, and they want their young people to be part of that experience. Our challenge is, how do we bring them in to the conversation? How do we engage them? And we've been deep in thoughts. All the things that you've been talking about today are things that we've been grappling with. As leaders of Catholic schools, it's always been, our kids look for certainty and structure. They want something to hang on to. So this notion that kids don't care about God, that's not where it is at all. They're seeking an understanding of where they fit, whatever their faith background is. And that's one of our really important roles that we have, is that we can give them, I guess, the space that you're talking about, that respectful space to find out and grapple with who they are, to give them some sort of lens with which to view the world in a respectful and open way that includes dialogue about who they are, and where they're coming from. So we're really grappling with that, ensuring that we are credible and that we bring meaning in a contemporary cultural context, and that's all the things that we've been talking about. So I guess just to sort of bring that together, our Catholic Identity Survey it's really affirming, actually, considering we have 42% Catholic. What our community wants, what they're happy with, is really exciting. We are doing some really good things in Catholic education, and I think we have to celebrate and be happy that we are moving in a really strong direction. They're looking for more openness to different cultures, beliefs and life philosophies. So it's our job to bring that dialogue in. And the other thing that we're really lucky with is what you were talking about. They are incredibly ethically responsible. They want a better world. And we have this amazing, vehicle within which we can bring all of our young people together for that conversation. The whole idea of ecology, sustainability, even the way that, the things that are happening in our world. And we have this opportunity to discount our social influences, because social media and influences, we don't want a world that is driven by what our kids find on social media. So I'm always very strong about that. We don't want to water down our story, but we want to bring all of our young people into the conversation. So we have been really specific in thinking about how do we open that dialogue in our classrooms. So a focus on social justice, but bringing in, well, what do you think? What does your particular faith, whether you're Muslim or you're Hindu, we're looking for similarities, not differences. And we're trying to say, hey, guys, we're all on the same page here. We all want the same things. This is our story. This is how we see the world. This is what, why we do the things that we do. But we want to bring you together on that journey and create that sense of solidarity and oneness that you've been talking about. So that whole idea of mutual respect and understanding is something that we're hoping to really build and drive, particularly in our schools. So I do want to say I'm a maths teacher, so I connected with you straight away. And of course, I'm the principal of St John Paul II, so I connect with you as well. Sincerest thanks for sharing your insights with us, and I feel very blessed to be part of this today. Thank you.